Welcome to the Glendale Water and Power Commission meeting of August 4th, 2008. May we have roll call?
Commissioners Chan?
Present.
Ibrahimian?
Present.
President Miller?
Present.
For the record, Commissioners Foley and Yao are absent.
Okay, our next item on these are consent items.
Consider minutes of the July 9th, 2008 meeting.
Do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
I move.
Seconded?
Aye.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against, please say no. The minutes are now accepted. Thank you. At this point, we'd turn the meeting over to General Manager Steiger.
Thank you. Today we have a very, very full agenda. We have a number of reports. I'd like to give you a very, very brief update on our strategic planning process, which is proceeding as planned, as scheduled. As of the end of July, we had met with the design team 4 times. The design team has essentially put together the framework of the issues, trends, stakeholders, threats, opportunities that essentially will make up the overall plan. From this point forward, we're now going into a stakeholder process where we will conduct a series of interviews and workshops over the course of the next 2 months, which will include the majority of GWP employees. I have met with all the employees at this point and cajoled them to participate. It's voluntary, but at this point it looks like we have approximately half of the GWP employee base participating, and that's a very healthy number. So that will commence later this month. In the meantime, we'll be interviewing other stakeholders throughout the community, the political part of our community, the city management. So we have a number of interviews and workshops over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks. So we are very, very busy right now with the strategic plan. I'm very, very pleased in the progress we've made so far, and in fact with the data that we've put together and what we're starting to see develop as the direction that the plan is going in. It's somewhat eye-opening, actually, so it'll be an interesting plan, an interesting series of workshops as we move ahead. So I look forward to presenting updates over the course of the next month or two. But we're still on track to have the plan completed by October. So that's an update on our strategic plan. Essentially, and you'll hear today a number of different issues, but many of the issues currently, and as I've mentioned to our employees, center around water issues, the lack thereof, some of the conservation efforts that are moving forward, and some of the things that we have to do as we move forward from here. So you'll hear a number of issues surrounding water, and of course electric still has reliability issues and supply-related issues, particularly greenhouse gas. So some of that you'll hear today, but as I said, we have a full agenda, so I'd like to move along.
Very good. Any questions? Let's move forward then.
Next, item 3B, Fleet Report by Robert LaRoche.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share with you the things that GWP has done to create a green fleet. Over 52% of all GWP vehicles and equipment use an alternative fuel or emission reduction technology. While staying within the vehicle replacement schedule, GWP has a goal to reach 85% by the year 2013. Currently, we have 226 vehicles and equipment in our fleet, and 38 of those vehicles are diesel-powered. Those diesel-powered vehicles run on biodiesel fuel with ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel at a percentage of 20 to 80, which commonly is used known as a B20. It's 20% biodiesel fuel and 8% ultra-low sulfur fuel. Of those 38 vehicles, 13 of them have been retrofitted with particulate filters. That is to comply with a regulation that has been established by the California Air Resource Board that all our diesel vehicles that are on road be retrofitted with particulate filters. The new diesel vehicles will automatically come with them from the factory with those filters. If you're wondering why we're anticipating a reduction in our diesel vehicles over the next 5 years, that is due to a regulation set by the South Coast AQMD, where municipalities are not allowed to purchase diesel vehicles unless an alternative fuel vehicle is not available that would meet the performance specifications for that vehicle replacement. At this time, we have 6 electric vehicles, and we anticipate that number to grow in the next few years due to the fact that manufacturers are reintroducing electric vehicles, and there will be a place for those electric vehicles when they become available. Also, the OEMs are making partnerships with companies to produce propane-powered vehicles. It's a conversion process that they've partnered with companies to do that with their original equipment, which will maintain original equipment warranties. We currently have 34 low-emission vehicles, 11 ultra-low emission vehicles, 11 super ultra-low emission vehicles, including electric hybrids. As you can see from our goals off to the right, we anticipate our biggest growth in that area of the super ultra-low emissions and the electric hybrids, again due to the availability of more electric hybrids, super ultra-low emission vehicles produced by the manufacturers. This next budget year, we're scheduled to retrofit 7 more of our vehicles with particulate filters. And in 2009, 2010, there'll be 7 more. And again, this is to comply with the CARB regulation for the diesel vehicles. We currently have 2 new diesel vehicles that are being built. They will be built with, again, particulate filters. And we have already received the exemptions from AQMD for this purchase because an alternative vehicle, fuel vehicle, was not available at the time of purchase. We also have 10 vehicles scheduled for replacement in 08-09. However, at this time, those purchases are being deferred, not only to adhere to the budget restraints, but also to take advantage of new technology that we see will be available in the next 2 years. Again, those will be electric vehicles and hybrids. There are new advances in the hybrid arena that we would like to take advantage of when they become available. So that will be benefited by deferring these purchases this year. This is another regulation that we have to follow by CARB. But we have to do it every year. We have to do an opacity test on our diesel vehicles. Simply, it's the smoke test. The smoke test is performed on all our diesel vehicles each year, and if it doesn't meet the standards set by CARB, then the repair to that engine or replacement is required. The standard is set at 40% smoke density. As you can see from the first year, the average of our fleet was well below that standard at 15.6%. Later that year, we introduced the biodiesel fuel. After a year of running biodiesel fuel in our fleet, we performed the smoke test again in 2002 and noticed a significant drop in the smoke test. all the way down to 4.6%. We then introduced the ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel with that biodiesel fuel, and again realized another drop in our smoke test. That reduction maintained all the way up to 2006, where you see another drop, and that was due to the retiring of some older vehicles that we had that even though they were still within the standards that CARB set, it was still higher than what we would like them to be and what the average of our fleet was. And in 2007 and 2008, we're starting to notice another drop due to the particulate filters. And we'll keep on tracking that, and hopefully that number will keep going down with more filters being installed. This chart here shows how we're controlling the expenditures on the fleet. The top blue line there is our maintenance and operations costs, and it shows that we have been successful in controlling and reducing our cost over the years, except for the spike in 2007 and 2008. And again, that has contributed to the purchasing of those filters. They're about $8,000 a piece, so that resulted in about $56,000 increase, and that line is going to stay there probably for the next 2 years until we fulfill our requirement, that regulation. The red line shows our fuel cost. Back in 1998, we were spending about 90 cents per gallon for fuel, and we're using about the same amount of fuel. However, we're spending about $4, a little over $4 a gallon of fuel now. You can see the effect that it's had on our spending. Currently, the entire city is purchasing fuel off the Orange County bid, and we are doing that along with some other cities, including Burbank, and this is to help stabilize the cost of fuel. This has been orchestrated through the City of Glendale Purchasing Department. This time I am told that the cost that our cost is even lower than the LA City contract. So it seems like we're getting a good deal right now. That brings us to our future strategies. Historically, fleet services section of GWP has been a maintenance, has been taken a maintenance role. We are in the process of changing that role into a fleet management role. This will allow us to evaluate vehicles' needs for the departments, establish and maintain fleet standards, design and downsize vehicles and equipment by class, and purchase improved fuel-efficient, cleaner emission vehicles and equipment. We will also be looking at the use of electric vehicles throughout our fleet more. Idle reduction technology is already available and standard on the purchase of large vehicles. We've established an anti-idling policy. Again, more hybrids are becoming available with better technology. We'll be looking at flex fuel vehicles, of course, hydrogen technology as it develops. The greening of GWP fleet just doesn't start and stop with the purchase of vehicles or the use of fuel. Our business practice and our operation also reflects a green fleet. We recycle pretty much everything that we do. We have a zero waste policy. We recycle our tires, our batteries, our coolants, our oils, filters. Our wash facility is designed to capture the wash waters, and 85% of that water is reused again. Our fuel island has been designed so water does not run across it or off of it. That helps us in our attempt to reduce our stormwater pollution. That, I'd like to open it up to you. If you have any questions, I'd like to answer them for you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the report, very comprehensive report. I just had a question about hybrids. Are we looking at hybrid pickup cars or trucks, or are we looking at hybrid cherry pickers possibly?
We'll be looking at the hybrid pickup trucks. Currently, there are hybrid pickup trucks that just came available. They're called a two-mode hybrid. Right now, the hybrid that we're all familiar with is the benefits are in town, where the electric motor kicks on and off while you're driving in town, and the engine will actually idle. But there isn't much benefit to those vehicles that are on the highway. The two-mode hybrid will actually add the benefit on the highway also. The platform that I'm familiar with as far as General Motors, the introduction of the two-mode hybrid for the pickup trucks, they don't offer a trim package that would be practical for our fleet. It's more of a higher end, leather seats and things like that. As they prove themselves, I'm sure they'll make trim packages available for the work industry.
I understand there are new cherry pickers, hybrid cherry pickers out there, so maybe you want to look into it.
Okay. You're talking about bucket trucks.
Bucket
All right.
trucks.
Aerial trucks, yes. Yes, there is, and I've been in contact with the manufacturers on those, and those will also be considered, and actually I have the information, the right specifications around those.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question. I'm seeing number of vehicles and equipment will stay 226 by 2013, which is the same number as what we currently have.
Right.
So for the next 4 or 5 years, what kind of a budget are we looking at to achieve all these? The new types of more efficient vehicle, I'm just curious. I'm assuming that is in the budget?
Yes, but I didn't bring that information.
Okay, that's okay.
It's going to increase.
In comment to what Ms. Chan just asked, I assume that your budget would be somewhat similar to your line graph for the O&M at least. You had like close to $350,000 a year, or is that?
That is just, that line graph is just for the operations and maintenance.
Okay,
It's not
all
for
right.
the capital purchases.
Okay. Did you have other questions?
No.
Okay. Well, that ties into something I was going to ask you. Your line graph didn't include capital. Is there a capital component to the budget here?
I didn't bring that information.
I can give you a little bit of insight on that. Yes, there is a capital component. As Robert mentioned, we've offset the purchase of new vehicles for this year. So we actually budgeted in this budget cycle for, I believe, 10 new vehicles, but we will not be purchasing them. So that will be deferred at least till next year. At the same time, we are looking to downsize many of the vehicles, which includes SUVs, pickups, and cars. So what we're looking to do is downsize them because obviously the fuel economy associated with it, but also because it costs less to buy them, and that offsets some of the newer technologies, hybrid, electric, and so on, that we'll be looking at. So there's no increase in budget over and above what we normally would do. In fact, as of right now, there's a decrease because we've got a deferral. So as far as looking beyond this year, we haven't really budgeted for that, but we will as we move on.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be great when that becomes available.
Sure.
That we get a copy.
Could we go to your third slide? Is that possible? I assume this is driven by regulation. You alluded to a CARB regulation. That's correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Which are the regulations that are driving our greening of the fleet? If you could comment, I think it would be helpful for ratepayers to hear that.
South Coast AQMD has what they call fleet rules,
Yeah.
and that drives the purchase of many vehicles, buses, integrated waste, trash trucks, street sweepers. The one that affects us is Rule 1196, which is for large diesel trucks. Rule 1191, which is the small cars that have us purchase the cleanest emission vehicles available at that time. That is why we're getting so many super ultra low emission vehicles. Even though there's low emission available, ultra low, we're not getting as many of those because there's more super ultra low available, and that's why the increase in that category is going to be so high.
The categories low and ultra low, super ultra low, these are regulatory designations, right?
Yes.
Okay. On your chart here that's up there, on the right side, we see the 2013 goal. Is that the goal in compliance with regulations?
No, that's the goal that GWP set.
Okay.
Some of these goals will be met early to comply with other regulations that are in place.
Okay.
Like the CARB has a number of regulations, and one of them is the particulate filters, the retrofit of those, and the idle reduction technology. So if a vehicle is running for more than 3 minutes, it will shut off unless it needs to idle to perform its function. Like for the bucket trucks, the PTO is engaged, that system will be bypassed so the operators can still use it, or a crane.
Okay. So we're ahead of regulations then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned CARB. That's a regulation that's under South Coast Air Quality.
California Air Resource Board.
Okay, yeah.
And again, they have a number of them that there are regulations for our portable equipment, which isn't listed here because they're off-road. But there's a number of regulations set by CARB that affect our off-road equipment. Backhoes or construction equipment, generators, pumps, like that, all fall under emission regulations also.
You also have a category here, biodiesel with ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel and particulate filters. That 13 there is part of the 38, I take it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let's see, I had a couple of other questions here. On your graph that you had subsequent to this, I think it's the second from the last slide, you had the fuel cost going up, and you mentioned that we're paying $4 a gallon for fuel. I presume that also includes the biodiesel fuel and the alternative fuels that you're citing?
The biodiesel fuel for the last 5 years now, I think, has been exactly the same as the diesel fuel, so we haven't paid more for that.
Okay.
Advantage.
The alternative fuels are basically the same cost then as what consumers are paying for their vehicles.
What alternative fuels are you referring to?
Well, biodiesel fuel and the ultra-low sulfur.
We're getting it cheaper than what the consumer would get it.
Okay. Let's see. Do we know how much we are spending on this program let's say, more than what we would be spending if we did not have the regulations? Do we know what the cost of regulations are on GWP?
For the CARB regulation for the particulate filters, is right now we're looking at $56,000 a year.
Okay, that's the O&M cost.
Yes.
Okay, but the capital cost,
when we buy a new vehicle, that would be absorbed in the cost of the vehicle.
Okay. All right.
Their filters are probably a little more expensive than what we're buying aftermarket-wise.
Yeah.
Cost is probably substantially more.
Okay. I have no other questions. I did want to thank you. This is an excellent presentation. I just wanted to ask questions to kind of clarify things for anybody who might be viewing. Thank you so much.
As far as the cost on the AQMD, we've received about 7 exemptions, and those have been probably at a cost savings of over $800,000 to GWP by getting those exemptions. That helps.
Okay, thank you.
Next, item 3C, underwater conservation update.
President, members of Commission. Hello, my name is Atina Hartunian. I'm here to present the Water Conservation Update. As I mentioned in our last meeting, our June production number was down in 1.3%. We don't have the July numbers just yet, and we will have that for you in the next Commission meeting. Some of our recent outreach efforts include a Tri-City meeting with Burbank and Pasadena that was very, very effective in meeting with them and learning about what they're doing to send out their conservation messages. They had the same pattern in water production as we did. They both saw a drop in production in December through February, similar to our own drop. And they also saw an increase in water production in March through May. So we're sort of on the same boat as Burbank and Pasadena. They had the same effectiveness in their outreach efforts, and they're also looking to do more advertising and working with us on our outreach, and we could streamline it and work together in the next few months. The Source newsletter will be mailed this week to all to all GWP customers, and it will include about 3 pages on the water supply issue, more conservation tips and information for customers. We have purchased more advertising in local newspapers, and we'll roll that out after the Source issue is mailed out. We've targeted restaurant owners again with a little bit more aggressive letter, encouraging them to please stop serving water to their customers. We've also sent out reported water wasters. We sent them letters. In all of our marketing that we do for our conservation outreach, we do report a phone number at the bottom for customers to report a water waster, and we've had 70 to date. And we've also developed a water waster postcard. I'm showing you what Pasadena has developed, but this is another item that we discussed at our meeting. And every time we get a water waster phone call, we will be sending out one of these postcards to the customer and just checking off what ordinance they have violated. So it's better than kind of sending out a letter. It's more eye-catching, as you can see. I'd be happy to pass it around, Jackie, if you don't mind. Sure. And we'll start sending those out next week. We already have a list of customers we can send them out to, fortunately. Last month, I provided information on our Smart Home Survey program that helps residential customers save energy and water by installing $50 worth of energy and water-saving devices for free. From this point on, at every commission meeting, I'd like to provide you with the numbers of the prior month, just so you can see how many customers have been calling for this free survey. Along with all the marketing that we do provide this phone number as well for customers to inquire about this free survey. And in the last month, we have had 69 calls for scheduling, and 42 of those were scheduled. And you can see the items that were installed and how much water was saved. The following is just a list of the next steps that we plan on doing in August and September to increase our water conservation outreach efforts. We will be meeting with Burbank and Pasadena again, as mentioned, just to streamline our efforts and purchase advertising together, and also send out the same message to all of the customers in the 3 cities. We have developed landscape workshops for residential customers it's more hands-on, it's first of its kind, it's very interactive. It will teach customers how to read their water meters and understand what they mean, how to set a water budget or target for their household. And the same class will be provided to homeowners associations and community groups, and will give them the tools to share this information with their tenants and their members. We will continue to mail out our water postcards, and we'll be placing recycled water signage throughout the city, just telling customers that we are using recycled water to water the medians and walkways and parkways if they see the water on and they're wondering why we're watering. We will include a new bill insert in the bills starting mid-August until mid-October. And we're focusing on a direct letter to property management companies just to reduce the amount of watering, and obviously talk to their apartment building owners about water conservation with their tenants. And we are researching placing conservation targets on GWP bills. Okay, these are some of the next steps, and that's about it. Any questions?
Tina, I had a quick question. You mentioned Tri-Cities, Burbank and Pasadena. Now, the first graph you showed looks like we're not meeting, obviously, our target. What's happening with the other 2 cities?
Same exact. They actually had the same exact chart. They had a decrease, as mentioned, in December through February, and then they had the same increase as we did during that really dry spring season, March through May. And so it wasn't a surprise to us because it was the same across the board, so we kind of know that everyone's going through the same situation.
Thank you.
I have two comments. One is, as mentioned in the last meeting, I don't really have confidence that the voluntary conservation effort is working very well. And I realize you're not here to talk about that, but I want to bring that up. I think it's time probably we start looking at something else. That's in the short term. In the long term, we also need to think about how we're going to meet demand with the supplies that we have. What's the dependable supply from MWD? What's the dependable supply from groundwater? And how can we meet the projected demands? I've suggested that we should maybe look at a paper on that, although that would, I could perhaps talk about that more under new business, but that would be an assignment that would take some time to complete, I would think. Not something that we'd expect at the next session. So I just wanted to mention that here.
Okay.
Were there other comments? We do have an outside comment. Is it appropriate at this point? Yeah, Mr. Milano, Herbert Milano wanted to speak on this subject. Mr. Milano. I've been advised that outside comments during regular agenda are limited to 3 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. My name is Herbert Milano. And commissioners and city staff and Mr. Steiger, one of the questions that I've had asked myself is why isn't the voluntary program working? Considering that this whole issue is a crisis, I was wondering, and I actually asked the city council directly, have they behaved in such a way that it conveyed the idea of a crisis to the population? If it had been a crisis, for example, having to do with terrorists, I would imagine that there would be continual messages every week. How are we doing? Where is the budget? What's the outcome? What's the staff? If it's really a crisis. And so I posed that question to them because when I look at the way that the city council responded to it, with a few messages sporadically, with a few, handouts that they gave the public, it just doesn't seem to have, to me, that the message of crisis has been given to the public in an effective way, that this is a crisis. Now, I pay attention to these things, and I looked at some of the television programs where you see the level of the reservoirs and the level of the lakes, and I sense the sense of urgency there. But I never get that by watching city council. In other words, the message from the people who are watched the most, it's not there. And so before we blame the public, let's figure out if there are other things that are happening that are basically telling the public that perhaps we don't have that type of issue. Reading the Glendale News Press, you have this belief that because of the continual construction and development, then we really don't have a crisis. I don't know how pervasive that idea is, but I think it'd be worthwhile looking at. And then I look at the kind of message that we're giving with regard to the staff, with regard to where is the emphasis to the most significant area for water conservation, which is, as I understand, the irrigation of homes. So why would we put our energies into all kinds of different meetings and addressing restaurants and so forth? If 62% of the water usage is in irrigation, why aren't we putting the emphasis on one area first, maybe do a sample area, target it, and go after and figure out what makes it effective and what doesn't make it effective? 50 seconds? All right, yeah. Thank you. And I think that's where I'm headed, that what I hear so often is that we are not measuring, or the sense that I get is that we're not measuring the important things. And so that if we were to take a neighborhood where there are a lot of homes and there's a lot of green space, you would say, the front yards and setbacks that are large, to see what kind of program would work most effectively and what is the kind of message that is most effective to be successful in that area, and then take that success and expand it citywide. And I figured that one of the things that I wanted to convey is show you what my bill from the city of Los Angeles looks like and how they convey the message, and compare that to the city of Glendale, but maybe I'll do that during oral communications. Thank you.
Mr. Milano, thank you for your comments. Let's see, next item.
Next item, underwater, water conservation ordinance update.
Mr. President, Commissioners, Craig Keenan, PBC Marketing Manager. I'm here to give you a quick update on where we're at with the water conservation ordinance. We've been taking a look at how we might update it over the past couple months, and I'll just see if I can. Basically, we've been looking at 4 options. We have the existing ordinance that mandates customer cutbacks based on a baseline year. We pick a year, say 2006 calendar year, and that's the one we've been measuring production against. And as you phase in the 7 different steps of the conservation, you go from 10% mandatory cutback up to like 50%. There's the LA way they're looking at it. Basically, they're just going to target water of landscapes. You go from, say, 4 days a week to 2 days a week to no days a week. The other one we were looking at was the temporary water conservation rates, which would basically be a new set of rates that would encourage conservation by, it would be a tiered sort of structure where the more you use, the more you pay. And the other way we were looking is a water budget, which would look at individual parcels of land and develop a water budget, and you would target off of that. The existing ordinance sets a minimum allotment for each customer class. It's the pros. I should have said that first, I guess. It's fair to those who have been saving. There's substantial penalties for violators. It's currently in place, and it is exempt from Proposition 218. The con is it's difficult to quantify the revenue impacts. There's a heavy administration burden to handle appeals because everybody can have an opportunity to appeal the penalty, and there would be some administrative cost to update our existing billing system. We would need to spend some money to update it so you could have something to compare to. Right now, you can't take like a current bill and compare it to the same period in '06. It can be updated, but there'd be a cost. The LA, the good thing about the LA is it's easy to explain and it complies with 218. The downside is how would you enforce it? People aren't allowed to water between, say, 10 and 5, and you'd have to be there between dark and dusk in order to make sure people aren't watering their lawns. So you'd have to have a whole team of people to travel around the city to make sure people aren't watering at midnight. Or the water conservation rates we were looking at, it would cost more for people who irrigated. It would give a priority to indoor use of water. Below average residential users were protected. They wouldn't see an increase in their rates until you got into the really high levels of shortage. It would have been able to balance revenue with expenses. As we started to look at that, there was the city attorney's office had some concerns with Proposition 218 and whether or not we could meet that legal threshold. A different problem surfaced with our billing software. Once you went to the temporary rates, then you couldn't compare it to anything. So it would be hard to give feedback to customers on the bill. And it would have been somewhat difficult to explain to customers, and it would have been temporary. That was the attempt to meet 218, is it would have been a temporary rate. In 2 years, you'd have to switch back, which would have been another burden. The water budget, it's fair to everybody, it's easy to explain, it's revenue neutral, it complies with 218, but we would have to have an automated metering infrastructure in place to support it. We would have to change our rate structure. You'd have up front a big load to go out and actually measure the parcels and find out how much water is appropriate for each piece of property. But once it's in place, it's pretty much the way to go. So basically, we're back to where we were in the beginning. It's in the short term, we want to we were recommending we work within the existing ordinance. It's in place. We fixed the Harris billing system to accommodate the baseline comparison. And we'd update and expand our water conservation programs and outreach. Over the long term, we're looking at going to AMI and seeing how we get to the water budget type system. And that's where we're at right now.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you say long-term,
Yes.
how many years are you looking at?
3 years, 2-3
3.
years. I believe that we're looking at rates and stuff in the next couple of years, so it would be during that process.
And within that time frame, you will be able to make all the necessary upgrades with your billing and information system and so forth?
Yes, that's the plan. So, we're looking at AMI in the next 2 or 3 years. So, water is already investigated, and they were planning on going ahead with that on their own, but now we're looking at conjunction with electric, and that's be my next presentation. So,
Just had a general comment about the crisis. I think during the public comment was mentioned the crisis. I'm not sure if the crisis is City of Glendale specific. I think it's a regional crisis. And I think what we are doing right now by teaming up with Pasadena and Burbank will help. But also maybe we need to take it a step further. And we attend the Metropolitan Water District meetings, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe lobbying needs to come for all the cities in the region. And to see what we can do as a region and not necessarily as just City of Glendale. So that's something maybe we need to look at also.
One comment. I think I misunderstood during the previous commission meeting. I thought the ordinance was up for to be sent to council, but apparently you're still formulating what it's going to look like. Is that correct?
we were reviewing our options. In the more we got into what we thought would been where we would go, the temporary, there was more questions that came up as far as how our billing system would be able to handle that. As you got to see what it would look like, then you had something to review. And legal was wondering, well, would this meet Prop 218? And it just seemed easier to fix Harris to work within the current system right now, and that way it would be ready for if we go to regional shortages in the next 6 months or so.
And the staff's internal analysis of the four options didn't really show that one is something that we should definitely head with. It's uncertain at this point. Is that correct?
Our recommendation would be, in the short term, to just work within the existing ordinance.
All right. But we don't have one of the four options selected, right, as a recommendation?
But that would be our recommendation.
Okay.
First option.
Okay, first option, all right. Okay, thank you. All right. We had a public comment also on this item, once again by Mr. Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Milano. Mr. Miller, Commissioners, and City staff, I have made several suggestions as to what I see as some deficiencies with regard to the way the current water bill is set out. And if I were to ask you, and not to put you on the spot, just if I were to ask you right now if you could recall what your daily average usage of water is, and challenge you for it, I think I'll be pretty sure that I'll find at least one of you who would not know what your daily water usage is. And I think that's what's missing. We are really missing the type of information that allows an individual to gauge what his usage is in a way that is that is clear. I have the bill here from the City of LA. Of course, I got my water bills from the City of Glendale also. And here it says that my water consumption for my family is, let's see, right here, days billed. And I had it highlighted here, nice and easy. 1 second. basically is giving me a cost per day of 34 cents a day is what it cost me to half a cent per gallon. And I believe we're using 77 gallons per day. So that's not bad for a family of four, I think, with the garden and so forth. But I've taken upon myself to really gauge to see how stringent I could be and come back to you with a personal experience. What can we do if things were really, really bad? But I think that if there's a single-family home, the typical one for most of, let's say, for most of the tracts in Glendale, what would be an expected water usage that people can say when they read the city bill, say, wait a second, I should be at 300 gallons per day, and I'm doing 400. It's a very simple, number.
1 minute.
That people could use, and the same thing would be for the other utility, the electricity. If we don't have the capability to really compare to the prior year, we can compare to a standard that would say if a single-family home is 400 gallons maximum, and if it is a multifamily, it's 300. Or whatever other number you decide that is could be effective. I think the numbers could be significantly lower. And that if it's explained in a very highlighted way, and then align all your resources towards achieving that level of knowledge and awareness, because if you don't have the awareness, then how in the world could people say, well, maybe I did do 5% or 3% or 1%? How do they know? Unless this information is absolutely clear. I think there is a solution. It's just that we are not really addressing and focusing on how to be most effective with it.
Thank you for your comments. Next item.
Underwater Local Water Resources Update and Chevy Chase Update.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Peter Kabunas, Water Services Administrator for Glendale Water and Power. This next item consists of a presentation by a consultant that the utilities hired. What we asked Mr. Mark Williams to do is to look at our local resources and give us an idea of the cost to develop the next acre-foot of water from each of our local water resources, and give us an idea of where we should be investing the next dollar. And that was his task to do, and so with that, I'd like to invite Mr. Williams to give his presentation to you.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Let's get the lights on.
Thank you. And I'd like to just provide this summary level presentation of a study that was conducted for Glendale, looking at budgetary estimates for developing local water supplies. This study looked at answering several major questions. And the first thing we looked at was establishing the current rates that Glendale is paying to pump, treat, and otherwise supply its local water supplies. This was really as a benchmark to see what these existing local water supplies cost. Next, we looked at the costs for developing new water supplies. This included groundwater from the Verdugo Basin and from the San Fernando Basin. These costs look at operation and maintenance, and they looked at the capital costs required for developing new supplies. Finally, we made a preliminary assessment of the likely demands and the costs for expanding recycled water service. This is showing an overview of Glendale's current local water supplies. Glendale has the right to pump groundwater from two of the basins within its service area. The first basin is the San Fernando Basin, shown here in the tan highlight. The city is currently pumping water from this basin through 8 wells which feed the City of Glendale water treatment plant. In the Verdugo Basin, shown in the blue highlight, the city operates a well field that's pumping water into some of the supply reservoirs in this area. The Verdugo Park water treatment plant takes shallow water from a infiltration trench, and because this water doesn't meet drinking water standards as groundwater does from these wells, this water requires treatment. It's then pumped into the distribution system. In the San Fernando Basin, there's about a 5,000 to 5,400 acre-foot per year extraction right. This is an adjudicated right, and it's based on return flow credit from water served within Glendale service area. The pumping right in San Fernando Basin also carries with it a storage credit, so from the extraction right, water which isn't used in a given year would accumulate as this storage credit. Currently, the city has roughly 69,000 acre-feet of pumping storage credit. Finally, there's the so-called physical solution pumping right. The city has a 5,500 acre-foot right in the San Fernando Basin. The way this works is that this water can be extracted at rates which are pinned to Metropolitan's rates. Currently, this physical solution rate is about $350 per acre foot to pump, whereas the 5,000 to 5,400 extraction right doesn't carry a pumping right fee with it. In the Verdugo Basin, the city has the right to pump about 3,860 acre-feet per year from any of these supplies. And finally, the city has rights to about half of the recycled water from the City of Glendale water treatment. The Los Angeles Glendale reclamation plant. The plant is producing about 16,000 acre-feet per year. Glendale has half of that right. That's roughly 8,000. However, Glendale is currently in an agreement with the City of Pasadena to provide up to 4,000. So the available supply of recycled water currently is approximately 4,000 acre-feet per year. This table is just a summary of the local water supply usage. In the San Fernando Basin, based on the extraction rights, this 5,000 to 5,400. In 2007, roughly 7,500 acre-feet were pumped against that extraction right. This results in a net, a negative balance on this, which means that the storage credit is used up to make up for the difference here. Based on this physical solution right, the city has 5,500 acre-feet per year. There's about 500 acre-feet per year of this right used, and so there's an unused right of about 5,000 acre-feet per year of physical solution water. And again, this comes with the $350 per acre-foot charge. In the Verdugo Basin, are the 3,860 right. Of that, about 2,560 were pumped between the various water sources, and there's about 1,300 acre-feet left over. Finally, with the recycled water, of the 4,000 feet available, about 1,560 were supplied to existing customers last year. So this leaves us with about 3,500 acre-feet left over with recycled water. This is showing the San Fernando Basin, and this is showing the existing wells. There's some problems with developing new groundwater supplies, and these problems are contaminants, and this map just gives a overview of the known boundaries of the contaminants. This green is showing high nitrate levels. Here we have some chlorinated organic solvents which have with them a regulatory limit, so the city must treat those before the water is served. And there's also, shown here in purple, chromium plumes in the San Fernando area. And you can see these existing wells are just tapping quite a few of these. The water is treated here. In the Verdugo Basin, our main issue is nitrate, and this is an aerial view of the known extents of the nitrate contamination. And you can see they're somewhat close to these existing wells. Switching to the results of this study, one of the first things we looked at were the costs to install new wells. These costs reflect the capital and operating costs of drilling new wells, installing new wells, equipping them, and then some regular maintenance which is required of these. In the San Fernando Basin, if you were to install a new well, you could produce somewhere between 1,300 to 1,800 acre-feet per year from that well. And this new well would cost about $800,000 to a little over $1 million to construct and equip. In the Verdugo Basin, the well productions are much less. Depending on where this is located, you could get upwards of maybe 300 acre-feet per new well. These new wells would run between $600,000 or so to about $800,000 to construct. This is this slide is an overview of the costs, budgetary cursory costs that we developed for the existing supplies. The costs for, in the San Fernando Basin, if we were to develop additional supply, you're currently using all of your adjudicated pumping rights. So these new supplies would be developed under this 5,000 acre-feet of physical solution water. So at the base, you have this $350 cost for the physical solution water before anything's even built. So the O&M costs and amortized capital costs now for wells would put us up at about $500 per acre foot. So if no treatment were required, just the cost of constructing new wells, this water would cost about $500 per acre foot. If these new wells were drilled and the groundwater contained organic contamination, chlorinated solvents, TCE and PCE, the treatment would put the cost of this water a little over $900 per acre foot. Finally, if these new wells were drilled and this water required treatment for organic solvents as well as chromium, we're at quite an expensive number here, about $1,300 per acre foot. In the Verdugo Basin, again, and this is based on this available 5,000 acre-feet per year of water that could be pumped via the physical solution right. In the Verdugo Basin, we have a much higher well cost for these new supplies. We're upwards of $500 per acre foot just to drill and install these new wells. And if these new wells then required nitrate treatment, we'd be on the order of about $800 per acre foot treated water cost. The study that we did took data that were compiled by Glendale Water and Power on potential new recycled water customers. And these data identified a likely demand for the new customers and also made some cursory evaluations of the capital costs required to provide connections to the new customers. And so what this analysis did for recycled water was look at the base cost for the recycled water, and as a basis for comparing it to everything else, we took the capital costs required and took that as an amortized value in the same way we did everything else in the study. So although that might not be something that's you're able to currently do, this is the way we were able to compare these costs. So there's a total of about 1,000 acre-feet per year of new supply for recycled water that's been identified among several dozen new customers. For the first 730 acre-feet per year of this, for the O&M cost to provide the recycled water, combined with the amortized capital cost to provide these new connections to the customers, we're looking at something a little over $400 per acre foot. If you were to provide service to all the identified potential customers, this would be about 1,000 acre feet per year of new recycled water supply. Based on the cost to provide the recycled water and then the cost to build all of these new connections, we're on the order of about $900 per acre foot. As a benchmark, I'm showing here the current 2008 Metropolitan Tier 1 treated water rate, which is on the order of $500 per acre foot, and we have a increase for 2009 of about $50 per acre foot on top of the current rates. And with that, I would like to thank you and certainly open it up for any questions.
Thank you for showing the benchmark, very revealing. Did you do you know anything about the Tier 2 cost structure and how that might compare?
I have those numbers. We didn't include, have those offhand, Rosanna? Yeah, I didn't include the Tier 1, the Tier 2 cost structures rather in that. That's,
The situation poses something of a dilemma for us because we're kind of given the option of using MET and then these other more expensive supplies, but
right.
At some point the MET won't be available, and then to use the other supplies, you can't do that unless you have the capital investment already in place.
Right.
So to really plan this thing properly, what we have to do is figure out when to make the capital investments so that when the MET supply isn't available, we could draw those other sources.
Yes.
Do we have any insight into when that might be?
That was out of the scope of this current study. This study really just was a first cut at establishing what it would look like with these respective sources to develop the next 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 acre feet. So the study really didn't, I suppose that would certainly be a good follow-up to do on this, but we didn't look at these planning aspects of the supply. That wasn't included in the scope.
It's something GWP is going to have to ponder.
Right.
There's another possibility here. I don't know if it would work or not, but water that has a high nitrate level might be suitable for irrigation without any kind of treatment if it were devoted to irrigation per se and not for any sort of potable usage.
Right.
That way you could obviate the cost of nitrate treatment for, let's say, the Verdugo Basin, or for that matter, San Fernando. But do we have also possibly, you might have some customers who might even be willing to make the investment of putting in a well, but I don't even know if that's, if there's legally that would work.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting That's an interesting idea.
And I don't know if there's customers out there either who are devoted exclusively to irrigation. So.
It's a good point, because this water, if you can pump it without having to treat it, it's certainly a lot more economical. And you have recycled water service in that area. You would save the costs of pumping into these higher service zones by just drilling wells in those areas, and if they were, say, high nitrate, using those for irrigation. I guess the other aspect of that would be any of your basin plan constrictions, but I guess those really wouldn't come into play with just this irrigation water, because it's not a recharge project. If you're recharging this, your 45, your nitrate MCLs kind of apply to whatever you're sinking.
Well, it's just a concept I'm tossing out there. Possibly there's some applicability of
right.
it. So,
well, you're making some investment in these wells, especially in the Verdugo Basin, where you don't have a lot of thickness, and you pay a lot of money to put in a relatively shallow well. So you're looking at blending in some of your instances as well. So that's that's another option, if you can blend with imported supplies.
Speaking of the contaminants, you showed plumes in a couple of your maps.
Yes.
When I see plumes mapped, generally I see contour lines. In this case, you just showed hatchers, colored areas. Did those hatchers correspond to the MCL concentration?
Those were known extents.
Based on which concentration?
I think based on detection.
Okay.
Those were from the city's GIS system. So I believe those were just the known aerial extents of those, and it's not necessarily corresponding to a certain concept. It would be really just the detection limit of what they can measure in those plumes.
And the scope of your study didn't include anything like location of any possible well we'd install, or its impact on a contaminant plume, or anything like that?
That wasn't included. Really, we made this just very cursory cut at just this plume map. So that was fairly much outside of the scope in terms of new well sites and potential locations for new wells.
Okay. I bring it up because, of course, if we were to site wells, we'd have to then think about the impact on the contaminant plume and
certainly
the impact on basin storage and things like that. So if we were to follow up on that, there would be a lot more work to do. But thank you very much. I don't have any other questions, actually.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. We asked Dr. Williams to condense his presentation. The few slides that you've seen represent a whole lot of data that were considered in presenting these conclusions to you. And really, the reason for this study was in order for us to be able to answer the question, where do we go next? There's no doubt that met rates will keep rising. Some of the other costs to drill new wells and so on will also keep rising. The question is, what's the smartest move? How do we spend in the best way possible the next GWP dollar to get the best value? Some thoughts. Commissioner Miller, you mentioned the concept of irrigating with nitrate water. The first thing that comes to mind as a thought is that the biggest bang for the buck would be to have a large area to irrigate. Yeah. And those are already irrigated with recycled water.
I see.
So we'd look at small scattered areas. Now we're looking at larger costs to distribute nitrate water. So there's some pros and cons, definitely things to look at and things that we will be looking at. And another reason for the study coming forth is the questions from the City Council, certainly from the Commission, about recycled water and why aren't we just producing enough recycled water to meet all our needs. And the reality is, as you saw, there's a limited amount of recycled to be produced. There's a limited amount of recycled demand. And also there's a high cost that comes with it. It's a high capital cost up front. So part of our next steps will be to come forth with a plan for how do we augment local resources. If it is recycled, it'll have a funding plan because funding will be required. We do not have funding mechanisms for that. And the next item that was on the agenda, if there are no questions on that. was an update on Chevy Chase 968 reservoir and pump station replacement. That is our largest capital project, and so it seems only fair to give your commission regular updates. And of course, progress of the project is one. The cost containment and schedule are also important things, and we intend to update you on a regular basis. In terms of progress of the project, we are proceeding. We've had some delays, as I will explain in just a second, and the phase we're in now is still preparing the foundation that the floor of the reservoir will be laid on, and this is a soil cementing process that's still going on. We expect that to be completed in the next 2 to 3 weeks, at which point we'll be laying pipes that will be under the reservoir and then proceeding with the concrete floor and up from there. In terms of change orders that we've had to date, for legal reasons, I can describe for you the ones that have been approved or the ones that are being recommended for approval to the city manager's office, but I am not at liberty, as you can understand, to discuss the ones that are being negotiated. The one that's been approved is a change order that's a credit to the city for soil testing that we paid to get done, but didn't have to pay. So we paid it, we got the work moving forward, and then requested a credit from the contractor, and we got that. That was a $35,000, give or take, dollar credit, and of course no time implication on that. There are two that are being processed. One is a storm drain lateral. Public Works wanted our contractor to do some work on a storm drain lateral that was on the street and also coming into the property where the reservoir is located, and that's being processed. And there was also a review for soil nail design that, again, we paid for and are looking for a credit, and that's also being processed. We believe we'll have that credit coming. One of the unexpected conditions on the site, as you know from previous updates, is that there was contaminated soil and water at the site that required a lot of testing that we didn't plan for. We had no reason to believe that an area that's had very little prior land use would have contamination. That's been agreed upon, and the amount that we're recommending to city manager for approval is an $85,000 plus change order and a 31-day delay. So that delay is what's concern to us. The money is well within the 10% contingency. Our 10% contingency is about $2 million, so we have a lot of room, and this isn't going to be a particularly drastic change order. And we think it's at that level is justified, so it's being recommended to the city manager at this point. So if there's no questions on that, we can keep moving. The next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Next item is the award presentation.
Which is a lot more fun to talk about than cost overruns or schedule delays. So, as the Commission may know, Glendale Water and Power conducted an experimental study on a portion of our system. And I'd like to introduce two people to discuss the results of the study a little bit and some of the awards that we received as a result of conducting a study. First, I'm going to introduce Mr. Dan Askenizer. He's the manager of our water quality group.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. President, members of the Commission, my name is Dan Askenizer, manager of the water quality group for Glendale Water. On behalf of a number of Glendale water staff, it's my pleasure to be here as part of this presentation. As Peter mentioned, what I'd like to do is just take a couple minutes and give you a little background and description of the study that we undertook. I don't have any slides, so I'll just talk for a couple minutes and try to describe what was going on. There's some very fundamental things that we do as a water department to protect public health, meet regulations. One of them is to maintain a disinfectant residual throughout the distribution system. This is a challenge for utilities all across the country. We're not unique. We have staff who go out there every week. We monitor, collect samples from our storage facilities out in the distribution system. We conduct tests right out there in the field. We take the samples back to our field laboratory and do some more testing. And based on those decisions, or that data, we evaluate and make decisions whether or not to apply chlorine to our storage facilities. Because as water gets older, through complex sort of series of chemical, biological reactions, that residual is going to degrade. So to protect public health, to meet drinking water regulations, we have to maintain that disinfectant residual throughout the system. So within the last couple of years, we've been looking at a couple areas to improve our program of what we currently do. One of those areas was the solar bee mixers. These are solar-powered mixers that have been installed in all of our storage facilities. We had no mixing of that water, where now we have continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that water is mixing. That's helped us a lot in terms of maintaining a disinfectant residual. And we know as we look at the first 7 months of this year, disinfectant application compared to last year, we've had about a 50% reduction of chlorine that we've needed to apply to the system. And I think a lot of that is attributable to the solar bees inside our storage facilities. At the same time we started installing the solar bees, we undertook the study. Now this was a new technology, chlorite, using chlorite in order to maintain and maximize disinfectant life throughout the distribution system. So we undertook this study, and doing a study like this, it's a pretty complex project, so we worked pretty closely with the health department as they sort of reviewed all facets of the monitoring, what we were going to do before they granted approval for the project. The project was approved by the health department. It went from August of 2006 to October 2007. It was divided into 3 phases. And as with any project, things did not always go as they were supposed to. We had a lot of things we had to deal with on the fly, figure out how to address them. I think in the end of the project, we learned a lot about our system. We learned a lot about chlorite and its effectiveness. And in the final 2-month phase of our study, chlorite was very effective. So, and before I turn it over, Dr. Blut from Malcolm Purney is going to talk about the awards that were presented for this study that we undertook. I would like to mention a few folks who were involved in this study. A study like this does involve a lot of folks within the utility, different groups. Our operations department, Bill Vinther, Dave Massey, Mike Romanino, and Sal Sanchez, and all the operators, pump mechanics, were intimately involved in this project. For water quality, we had Ray Notario, Scott Daly, Martin Manicharian, Andre Ivazjan, Tim Amison, and Ruben Gomez were also involved. So it takes a lot of coordination between these groups. And finally, I'd like to mention Pat Hayes, who's no longer with the city, my boss Peter, for their continued support throughout this endeavor. So that concludes my remarks, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Blut. We'll talk about the awards. Thank you.
Mr. President, Commission people, I'd like to talk about the 3 awards that are here before you now. I'll start with the largest of the awards. It's from the American Academy of Environmental Engineers, the AAEE. The award is for excellence in environmental engineering. It's their annual competition that they have, and Glendale was awarded the grand prize in research. It's a very prestigious award. It's considered the Academy Awards of Environmental Engineering, black tie event and the whole thing. So some of the criteria that went into judging this, just to give you a little bit of insight into why Glendale was awarded this prestige, is some of the criteria include, first of all, the holistic environmental perspective associated with the project. The innovation of the project. As Dan mentioned, this was the first application at a demonstration scale of chloride ion for nitrification control. So it really was groundbreaking work. The proven performance of the technology and customer satisfaction associated with improving water quality. The contribution to an improved quality of life. And finally, economic efficiency. And as Dan mentioned, technology such as this can really reduce some of the costs associated with applying disinfectant residual and a lot of the manpower in the distribution system. So that's the large award. The Triangular Award and the plaque here, the plaque I'll first talk about, it's the CELSOC Award. It's the Consulting Engineers and Land Surveyors of California, which is soon to be known as the ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies. They're actually changing their name. The Consulting Engineers, the CELSOC Award, is for the state of California. It's an Engineering Excellence Award again, and Glendale was awarded the Honor Award. The judge criteria in this award include the uniqueness and originality of the project, the future value to the engineering profession and the perception of the public, the social, economic, and sustainable development considerations associated with the project, the complexity of the project. As Dan mentioned, there were a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved. And finally, exceeding clients' needs, including the budget and the schedule for the project. And then once Glendale was awarded the CELSOC Award, they were selected to go into the ACEC National Award, in which they were awarded another Honor Award. In this category, there's a distinguished panel of judges with 25 to 30 judges. They spend 3 days judging all of the projects that are put forth in front of them. And they wind up giving out 8 grand awards. This includes everything from structural engineering, bridge design, research, as this was in, and you name it in civil engineering. There's a category. There were 8 grand awards, 16 honor awards, and this is an honor award that was given to Glendale. And so, in conclusion, it's my honor to have been part of this project, and I really appreciate the support of the city and of the commission in making this possible. I congratulate you.
That concludes our presentation. Needless to say, I'm really proud. You can imagine in my role, I had very little to do with it other than just say, go for it. And we were in very good hands with Dan Askenizer heading up our water quality group, and great partnership with Malcolm Perney, and a privilege to work with Dr. Blood on this. And Mike McGuire, Dr. McGuire also worked with us on this project as well. He couldn't be here tonight, otherwise he would have joined as well. So that concludes our presentation.
I'd like to add my congratulations to Peter and his staff and Malcolm Perney, and thank you very much, and we're very, very proud. Thank you.
I'm sure the other commissioners will have something to say, but I just wanted to say that I'm very impressed that you got all 3 of these awards, and especially the American Academy of Environmental Engineers. I know they have very exacting standards, so congratulations on that. And thanks to Dan Askenizer and his staff, and you, Peter, for all the work you guys do to make sure that the water is safe to drink. It's a tremendous job, and one that we often take for granted. But anyone who's been exposed to the horror of waterborne disease knows what an important job it is. Thank you very much.
I share the same sentiments. Thank you all for your hard work.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the Commission's kind remarks. We'll make sure we'll pass it on to staff that couldn't be here with us. Thank you again.
Next, item 3D, customer service, analysis of monthly billing versus bi-monthly billing.
President Miller, members of Commission, Tammy Valier, Customer Services Administrator. I believe you all received a copy of the report assessing the different options for monthly billing. Some background before I go into those options. Most of our customers are currently billed bi-monthly, and those customers include our single-family residents, multi-family dwellings, and small commercial. Only about 5% of our customers are billed monthly, and those are primarily our large business customers. However, that represents about 50% of our revenue. So about 50% of our revenue is billed bi-monthly and 50% monthly. Keeping in mind that is not just GWP revenue, that is for all of the services that we bill. So, started here. Some of the options that we considered 3. Option 1 was to physically read the meters and bill customers monthly. Option 2 was to continue to read the meters bi-monthly and estimate the reads for the alternate months. And then option 3 was more of a payment option, and that was to continue to have our current process of billing bi-monthly, but provide a monthly payment plan for customers. Reading and billing monthly provides many benefits. Some of those include mitigating the difficulties customers have in paying larger bi-monthly utility bills. It aligns with other household bills such as gas, telephone, and cable. Monthly billing also provides timely consumption of information, allowing customers to adjust their usage and enhance conservation. And customers have earlier notice of unusually high water consumption due to possible leaks. It may reduce high bill complaints and rereads due to customers being able to recall their personal pattern, usage patterns, and weather patterns in the last 30 days as opposed to the last 60 days. However, all of these benefits only apply to this option when the meters are physically read each month. To read and bill monthly is expensive. We would almost be doubling our workload in some areas. It would require the addition of 8 meter readers at a fully loaded overhead and benefits expense of $700,000. We'd be doubling our postage, bill print, and payment processing costs at about $500,000, and that does not actually include all of our payment processing costs. I did not include walking cashiering transactions since that is pretty difficult to anticipate. It includes the additional vehicles that would be needed for meter readers and the additional meter reading handheld equipment. So the one-time cost for reading and billing meters monthly, the one-time cost is a little over $200,000, an ongoing cost of $1.2 million. The second drawback, which is significant, is that we are looking at AMI, which would eliminate the reader positions altogether. So it may not be prudent at this time to add to that workforce. Option 2 considered billing monthly and estimating every other read. So month 1 we would read the meter, and then the month that the meter is not read would be estimated based on the customer's historical usage. Then the following month, which is the actual read, it would true up the usage automatically or manually depending on the previous estimate. Automatically as if we underestimated the prior bill. However, if we overestimated the prior bill, then we would actually have to cancel the prior bill and rebill that bill. This option has lower operating costs than reading monthly since we would not have to add to the workforce. However, you do lose all of the conservation and leak detection benefits from this option. The only benefit is the ability for customers to pay the smaller bills on a monthly basis. Estimating bills does have some fairly large impacts to the operation. We anticipate increased call volume and counter traffic due to the estimated bills. These calls would also directly increase the number of field rereads. Incorrect estimates increase the manual adjustments and cancel and rebill process that I just described. There could be an increase to the high and low usage exceptions that would then need to be worked and billed, which would also delay the bill for the customer. We would have to move time of use meters into monthly routes since those actually have to be physically read and not estimated. That would affect our route efficiency. And also another significant impact is that estimating bills using the current tiered rate structure is problematic, potentially causing customers to pay too little or too much. The fiscal impact for this option includes, again, doubling the postage, bill print, and payment processing. There is a customer notification cost due to the estimated bill. We believe that would have to have more notification to the customer describing how we would be utilizing the estimates, what those would be based on. There would also be a special notification needed for our current direct debit customers. That is because right now we're just accessing and debiting their accounts 6 times a year as opposed to 12 months. And then just a small change to the billing system. So the one-time cost for this option would be about $50,000 and ongoing cost about $500,000. However, we do expect this to impact our office, but this is an unknown number. Additional staff would be needed possibly for the additional rereads, the adjustments, and additional customer calls. The following are a few examples of utilities who have actually made changes to their billing frequency, most of them attempting to use this estimated format. The City of Anaheim just in July began a pilot program and began converting 800 customers to monthly using the estimated format. They do expect similar operational issues and anticipate the need for additional staff, including one meter reader who will be designated specifically to work the rereads that they anticipate. They don't really have any data since they just started, but they will have something for us in about 6 months. The City of Burbank in 1995 started to bill customers monthly using estimated reads. The process was short-lived and they discontinued the program mainly due to disgruntled customers. The City of Long Beach, prior to 2005, they billed monthly. Then in 2005, they began to read meters bi-monthly using the estimated reads. They are very unhappy with the estimated bills, and they're currently considering going back to actually reading the meters on a monthly basis. City of Rochester Hills, prior to 2004, billed monthly and estimated the alternate months. Because of continual customer complaints due to estimated bills, they began reading and billing bi-monthly. San Diego, a similar situation. In 2003, began using the estimated alternate months reads. 4 years later, reverted back to bi-monthly and cited the increase in manual adjustments and customer dissatisfaction. EdCorps, City of Edmonton, prior to 2008, used estimates from between months. They're now reading monthly. Again, escalation in customer calls regarding the estimated meter reads. United Water Idaho, just a little bit different of a scenario. They wanted to move from bi-monthly to monthly, but they wanted to charge the customers $1.15 per month, and the Utility Commission rejected that, stating that the benefits did not outweigh the cost. So those are just a few examples of people who have attempted this. I'm sorry, I didn't switch that slide. Option 3 is to bill monthly and pay monthly. Bill bi-monthly and pay monthly through our direct payment program. The current program that we have for direct payment, the customers authorize GWP to deduct payment from their checking account, and the payment is deducted on that customer's due date. The new program that we're designing, the customers will continue having the option of having the payment deducted on the due date, or they can choose the day of the month that the payment is deducted. So if their payday's on the 15th, they can choose to have the 15th deducted on that date. We also will have an additional option of having the bill divided in half and having the payment deducted each month from their checking account. This does require modification to the CIS system, but it's not significant. It doesn't look like it's going to be very costly at all. We're looking at that right now. So in summary, option 1 was the monthly billing, physically reading the meters each month. It provides many benefits to the customers, and it enhances conservation efforts. It does come at a high cost, and the significant impact really is the implementation of AMI and eliminating the meter reader positions that we already have. Option 2 is the monthly billing using the estimated reads for alternate months. It does give the customers the ability to pay smaller bills more frequently. It is lower cost than option 1. There are many operational impacts and inefficiency to the operations, and we do expect there would be a decrease in customer satisfaction. Then option 3, which is the bill bi-monthly, pay monthly, it provides the same benefit for customers to pay smaller bills more frequently. There is additional flexibility since customers can choose the day of the month that suits them, and it's a very low-cost option. In fact, it's the lowest form of payment we currently accept. So this option has the possibility of actually reducing our costs. At this time, we feel we should not convert to monthly billing. If AMI is implemented and as routes are saturated, we can convert them to monthly billing, and we will implement a direct payment plan that allows customers to pay monthly. that's the end of my presentation.
I have a question. Given all the options, I agree the recommended method is a good one. I have a question on the least expensive form of payment. In your analysis report, you indicated it's 6.5 cents per transaction.
Correct.
How did you come up with that, and how are we collecting that?
That's actually through our city treasurer's office. It's through the account reconciliation. There's very little manpower that goes into that. We basically collect automatically through the system which accounts need to be collected. It automatically goes to the customer's bank and automatically comes back to our bank and is posted to the account.
Okay. And the customer's aware of that when they set this up?
They have to actually sign up for it and give us authorization, including their account number and routing number.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say I read your analysis. I thought it was excellent, and I concur with your recommendations. Thank you.
Next item, item number 3E, power, our energy hedging program.
President Miller, members of the Commission, I'm Ned Basson with Glendale Water and Power. Previous meeting, we were asked about the hedging program for our energy. First, let me talk about what our needs are and how we establish that. We model our system operation for an 18-month look ahead. And we do that month by month. And it includes all of our energy needs each month. And from that, we determine, we add what our must-take energy is, what the various sources of energy are that we have to produce. The program optimizes the operation and provides us with the remaining, which is our electricity and energy requirement. That requirement usually represents about 45 to 50% of our energy requirements for the month. Now this is energy, it is not capacity. Last week I talked about our capability, and we have more capability than we would need in any particular month. This is the purchase of the gas or in some cases electricity in order to meet those needs. And it's primarily gas for Magnolia and Grayson power plants, and electricity if we can purchase it at lower cost than it would be for us to produce it at those power plants. Hedging comes into play when we ask the following questions. Do we buy what we need now? Do we buy what we need later when the price gets a little better? Or do we just wait and buy it when we need it at whatever the price is? Reason the question comes up is this is a graph showing the price of natural gas for December of each year. This is 2003, 2004, 2005, as seen in July of that year. So in July, the price, if you wanted to buy natural gas in December, it was just under $6. In July of 07, if you wanted to buy it for December of 07, it was just a little over $8. Just before this weekend, we were sitting right here, and these are the prices, the NYMEX prices, if you wanted to buy gas for December. And you can see just a few years ago, it was under $6. This was about just under 7. This in July was just above 8. Then Katrina hit, and it skyrocketed. And then July of the next year, it was at $10. You can see last year it came down, it was around 8, and this year, right now, we're looking at around 10. So that's the situation. Should we buy all of this now, or should we wait for the price to drop? If we had bought it here, the price has dropped, I think, about 80 cents, 70 cents today on the cost of December natural gas. So we could save money if we bought it today as opposed to last Friday. And so that becomes the issue for hedging. Hedging is basically insulating ourselves from market price spikes of the future cost of energy. And there's 3 ways that we do that. One is we lock in a fixed price for energy. The second is we cap the price of energy. And the third is we obtain a discount in the future cost of the energy. The third one isn't really defined so much as hedging, but it is a method we use to keep our fuel costs low. GWP's goal is to be 80% hedged on its peak requirements for each month. Since we're already about 50% secure with energy from our must-take operations, we need then to hedge approximately 30% more to be at the 80% number. One is to fix the price of energy, and the way you can do that is you can buy the fuel now, or you buy a resource that provides the energy at a price insulated from the market. And one example of that is the purchase we have of in-ground gas reserves. Although those prices could fluctuate based on the cost of labor or the cost of equipment for drilling and transportation, it is insulated from just the spikes in the market because we own the commodity. Another is to cap the price of energy, and there are financial instruments that allow you to do that. One is to buy a call option and sell a put option. I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. And there is a financial instrument that will allow you to fix the price. A call option is, let's assume the price of gas is here, and that could be anything, but let's just take for the sake that it's $9 a million BTUs. You can buy a call option which protects you on the upside, and let's just say you buy that $1 or above, so you buy it for $10. So if the market is above the $10, you're protected because you'll have to pay no more than the 10. Basically, they will reimburse you for anything over $10. So you're protected on the upside. It's just that a call option could be expensive, and it adds significantly to your cost of fuel. So another thing that we do, and particularly in a volatile market, the call premiums can be expensive. And so another thing we do is we could sell a put. Selling a put takes away the potential downside of the market, but it helps pay for a portion of the cost of the call option, and it actually makes it cost effective to do so. The way you can kind of rationalize this is if you say the gas prices drop way to here, the gas that you have put a put price on, you'll have to pay this price. But since we're at least are usually about 20% unhedged, that remaining gas would be at low cost, and so you can feel pretty comfortable that all in all we're doing pretty well. The other part is you look at the volatility and the likelihood that you will actually get down to this price. And that's one of the reasons that you sometimes hesitate to put on a call, because it's very expensive, and selling the put doesn't decrease that cost or save you enough money in which to really make that transaction. Another thing about a call price is a premium that you pay gets reduced as you go higher up, but it increases as you go further out in time. And so, because there's greater risk for the person that's selling you the call. The third thing that we could do is obtain discounts on energy, on the cost of energy. And one way we did that was with a gas prepay agreement that I talked about in previous meetings. It does not fix the cost, but it does reduce the cost. And We had a substantial prepay purchase that we've made long-term. We're saving about 92 cents or 91 cents a million BTUs on the gas that we do buy from that. Actions taken by GWP for hedging. One is we purchased the gas reserves, and that currently provides about 5% of our monthly needs. Second is we have placed call and put options for natural gas, and currently about 11% for the months through March 2009. That's 11% if I were to look at our total energy needs. It's actually about 22% of what was needed to be hedged. So between these two, we're hedged up to close to 80% for the months through March of 2009. And the third thing is we've entered into the long-term gas prepayment agreement for a discount. It was 91 cents a million BTUs, and that represents about 28% of our monthly needs. Are there any questions?
Excellent primer on the subject. Thank you very much.
The next item is under item number 3F, Marketing, the AMI Overview.
Down on the bottom someplace, I hope, right? Let's see.
There it is.
Sorry about that. Mr. President, Commissioners, Craig Keenan, PBC Marketing Manager. Here to give you an update on our AMI. You've heard that word, Advanced Meter Infrastructure. On July 22nd, our consultant, we've been working with KEMA, gave us a preliminary overview of the business case, and that's what I'm going to go through here. Basically, the key benefits we were looking for, and these, I should say, these aren't all quantifiable, but they're recognized benefits. Basically, AMI is the foundation for the smart grid. That's not yet defined, actually, what a smart grid will be, but it will include AMI, two-way communications, advanced sensors on your distribution assets, and improved efficiency, reliability, safety, things like that are what are included in the smart grid. It can help us with our environmental stewardship, provide us with demand response, energy efficiency, and other new programs, support real-time pricing for electricity, time of use type rates, improve system visibility for our customers. Through in-home displays and other devices, they'll be able to better manage their energy and water use. They'll know how much they're using, when they're using it, and not 2 months later. Improved customer service. You got faster response when you're on the phone with the customer and they're asking you about energy and water bills and usage and how much they used. You can get their real-time information for up-to-date information and be able to better answer their questions. Better manage our revenues. You would be able to have remote turn-on, turn-off for electric. Not sure if we're going to do that for water because of the power it uses to turn on and turn off the valves. You'll be able to detect theft detection with it, and Tammy would have to tell you what a WHO bill is, but it is something that can save us money. I think it's when somebody moves out and then there's power being used, but it's not actually paid for yet. You don't know who's going to pay it, so it's a WHO bill. Is that right? Cost reduction, reduce labor for meter reading and the bill processing, electric and water service improvements, better operating performance, outage response. You'll know where the outages are quicker. Water leak detection. You'll know You'll be able to identify that. Basically, the scope of our study, KEMA looked at our current business context. They developed the high-level requirements for smart metering. They looked at alternative scenarios to meet our requirements. They projected cost, benefits, and deployment schedule, and recommend the best. The goal is to recommend the best deployment option and technology. Basically, what is AMI? It covers the whole endpoint, like in-home devices that would give customers their usage information and bill information in real time. Those devices would communicate with your meter through a home area network. That data would then interface over a local area network and collectors. I'm getting above my head with these terms. A wide area network, and then it gets back to the utility and goes through our meter data management system where we can then use the information. And it's two-way communications in AMI. You might hear of AMR. That's just one-way communication. You can't talk back to the house. Under AMI, you can talk to devices in the home, and they can talk back to you. The different types of technologies, the point-to-point technology is you have a cell tower and then it communicates with the meter directly. The next kind is a mesh network. Basically, it's the meters talk to other meters and end up talking to a collector, which then sends the information back to the utility over the internet or some other means, maybe our fiber network. Then there's another way is a broadband over power line. It's like internet over power line. It's very complicated. I'm sure it can be done. It's very complicated, very expensive. But the thing with the broadband over power line is supposed to give you the capability of sending more data. I don't know if I can go back. The thing with the mesh, you can always add more collectors, and if you add more collectors, then you can increase the amount of data you can send back to the utility. That's one way around the broadband. Peripherals, you through what the one device they're looking at is a Zigbee device. This would be put on the meter that you can then talk to your gas meter and your water meter and pool pump and hot water tank, other things in the house. Have a display that can tell you different things and help you with your usage. I guess you have a programmable communicating thermostat, like reading gas, water, in-home display, other different kinds of things. They're even talking about being able to talk to your washing machine and your dryer and refrigerator and other things. This is an example of what an in-home display might show you. I didn't know it, but it's blinking through the different things, telling you how much kilowatt hour, what your bill is to date, and things like that. So it's just one example. Another, I've seen these where they have the globe that's in the house, and it changes color depending on how expensive electricity is at that time. They use these back east. When we looked at the cost-benefit analysis, we looked at the cost of the electric meters, the communication devices from the water meter to the electric meter, and then from the electric meter into the home, the IT hardware, software installation, program management. Benefits would be the labor savings, operational improvements, and societal benefits. There was a whole list of benefits in the beginning. You can't really quantify those, so they're not necessarily taken into consideration, numbers-wise. But in terms of the business case, it was 15-year analysis, 3-year deployment, assumed 3-year warranty on the equipment, and it included the societal benefits, which are mainly a demand response and energy efficiency type. And the initial results we received, it looked at the point-to-point and RF mesh were both positive in terms of the internal rate of return and the net present value. The paybacks were long, but 9-10 years. But the actual costs they're very conservative estimates of costs. So if we do an RFP, we'd expect to get much better pricing. The broadband over power line is, I don't know of anybody that's really doing that yet. There might be a few. It's very expensive. It's very hard to maintain right now. Our next steps are to finalize the technology plan and the business case. We would then present those results to City Council and seek approval for a pre-deployment type project, issue the RFP, see what the costs are, and then validate the assumptions. That's where we're at.
Thank you very much.
Next item, CFL recycling report.
I don't have anything long. I just wanted to share with you that our customers can recycle and drop off their used or broken CFLs to the city's hazardous waste collection center on Flower Street, and that they're open from 9 to 1 every Wednesday and Saturday. We will be mentioning this in the next issue of our Source newsletter, directing customers to the location. And we have developed customer fact sheets, and I can have Jackie distribute them if you don't mind, Jackie. Thank you. Customers can call for information on where to take their used and recycled light bulbs, and if they have broken light bulbs, how they can clean it up and take it to the collection center. And any customer that doesn't have access to the website, which has this information on there, can call our customer service department, and we'll be happy to go over the list with them or send them a copy of the fact sheet if they're interested.
Tina, could you explain what a CFL is?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Compact fluorescent light bulb. A lot of customers are concerned what to do once the light bulb burns out, or if it's broken, how to clean it up. And the fact sheet includes information on where to take it to be recycled, and also how to clean up after a broken CFL, and also where to dispose of it. And used CFLs, compact fluorescent light bulbs, can also be taken to local Home Depot centers for recycling as well.
You have this information also on the website, I
Yes,
take it?
it is on the website as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, 3G Electric, reliability indices.
Good evening, President Miller, members of the Commission. I'd like to say that we continue to make progress with our reliability. In the past month with our goals, we've met 2 of the 3 indices that we'd like to meet. The SAFE, which is the reliability index for the average interruption frequency index. Our goal is to have 1 outage per customer on an average, and we're down to 0.83. For the SID, which is the system average interruption index, we're down to 35 minutes. Our goal is 40. However, CAIDI, which is the actual outages that the customer experienced, the ones that experience the outage, we're averaging 42 minutes per customer. That's slightly above our goal of 40 minutes. So we're working on that. We want to get that 2 minutes down so we can meet our goal. Again, compared to the industry is averaging about 90 minutes per outage. So we're doing pretty well compared to the industry, but we want to set a higher standard in light of the problems we've been having in the past years. Along that line, last month, for July, we had 4 outages, and 2 of those are from my favorite subject, the Mylar balloons. The 2 Mylar balloons, one occurred on July 6th. 585 customers was impacted for a total outage of about 16 minutes. The second outage was on July 15th. Over 2,000 customers was affected for about 17 minutes, and another 607 of that 2,100 customers was affected for for about 2 hours, because the balloon actually damaged one of our disconnect switch, and we had to replace it before we can restore power to those 600 or so customers. One outage was due to palm front, and that impacted a little bit over 1,900 customers for about 9 minutes. Again, palm fronts, we changed our reporting, by the way, to separate palm fronts from tree trimming, because there's a misunderstanding that the tree trimming, when we report palm fronts, as part of a tree. we try to separate that because palm fronts really is something we cannot control, because when the wind blows, those palm fronts can go anywhere. And the tree trimming program that we have, in looking back, we've only had very, very few incidents really related to a tree with branches near the power line. So in future reports, you will see palm fronts as a separate item. So that we have good metrics on things we can control. And the last outage was due to a contractor working on the Fairmont extension project. In that process, they accidentally damaged the landfill gas that feeds the power plant, and we needed, as part of an emergency response, we needed to disconnect and shut them down. So we had to take power out from number 7 Shoal, which affected about where's my number? It affected about 1,900 customers for less than 1 minute. So that's our summary. And with respect to Mylar balloons, I submitted a report to you on where we are with the Assembly bill, where it is in the Senate, and when they're considering it. Instead of January 1, 2010, they're now looking at January 1st, 2011 for any bill to become effective, but there's still a lot of discussions going on between the two lobbyists from both sides, between utilities and the balloon industry, and it doesn't look like, unless there's a middle ground, that this bill would go through. So we're keeping a close eye on it, and we're trying to put our 2 cents in to the extent that we can to help the bill out. With that, any questions?
Yeah, I want to mention one thing. I want to congratulate you on all your hard work regarding the Mylar balloons. I don't know whether it's late in the summer or not, but like bill inserts on Mylar balloon safety, I don't know whether that's ever been considered or done, or safety messages on your website indicating what to do with Mylar balloons, etc.
We did. Using the source, we sent out information about Mylar balloons. We also took an ad in the Glendale News Press and did an article. We tried to address Mylar balloons around 2 time periods of the year, around Valentine's Day and during graduation period, which happens to be much longer. In fact, I have a collection of Mylar balloons in my office, if you're interested, what they look like after they burn. So. There is one misconception about Mylar balloons. They don't have to make contact with the power lines to make an to cause an outage. All they really have to do is to bridge that gap, the safety gap that we have the 2 lines, and those Mylar balloons could cause what we call an arc.
Right.
And these balloons that you see, you would see the burn where it actually caused an arc, but it did not make any physical contact with the lines. So it's something that we need to really educate our residents with, is once you let this go, they don't have to hang onto the lines to cause a problem.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to commend you for having the lobbyists meet with the balloon manufacturers. I'm hoping that maybe they can suggest some solutions to the problem. I thought that was a good step.
And Burbank, our neighbor, is really the front runner in this bill. So we're riding on their tailcoats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, oral communications. Item 4A, oral communications, which were deferred from the July 9th meeting.
We have a oral communication from Mr. Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon, President Miller, members of the Commission and City staff, Mrs. Steiger. My name is Herbert Milano. The issue of oral communications throughout all the commissions in Glendale has been of concern to me. As you can see, there are not many residents or stakeholders coming before you. I remember that one of the first times that I came a few years ago, I was told that it had been 2 years since the last time anyone had come over to the GWP meeting to make a presentation. I believe that it is the responsibility of commissions to encourage and to basically measure their effectiveness as to how well they are bringing the public to come and participate, as opposed to letting the standard, if nobody shows up, then it must be that there's no problem. But I think that the hour which we have the meetings at 4 p.m. may not necessarily be the most convenient and suitable for a lot of people who are still at work. And the manner in which we attempt to encourage the people to partake in this process, whether we try to encourage it through the high schools or have people come in and speak in their own language and translate for them. But I think it's necessary to really encourage it. Now, I don't have any qualms with regard to what oftentimes happens at other commissions, but my reaction to not having oral communications is more in line with what I have seen in other commissions. The Traffic and Parking, Transportation and Parking Commission missed 60% of their regular meetings last year. Issues that should be addressed by the commission generally are not put on the agenda. Whenever a hot issue comes up for some unexplained reason, there is no meeting and the meetings are canceled. And it happens with other commissions, especially when sensitive issues are happening. And after a while, those of us in the know began to see a relationship between a delicate issue coming up before the city council the following week, and all of a sudden, that commission meeting is canceled right before that. But I don't have any of those concerns with any of you. I just simply, that the actions that I take is basically a reminder to city management and to the city council that this is our only venue, and you do represent the stakeholders of the city, and we hope that you take the initiatives in our interest forward in ensuring that there truly is some active participation by the public. I am very much in favor of communicating and trying to present to the public the simplest message possible that can give us the most effective results. And I think that's what I've been trying to do, so that all of these meetings and how long they take, that we come back with an idea of, oh yeah, these are the initiatives that the city is taking forward. This is what I expect in the future. These are my costs that I could expect in the future. And I have a significant amount of admiration for the electrical utility people and for the report that just preceded me in addressing a very, very definitive problem. You know, we have these outages. You know, this is this current state of the outages. These are the problems that cause it. This is what we're going to do, and here is our results. I think that if every commission in the city were to do that, we would be in fantastic shape, because it couldn't be clearer. It's, I think it is the prime example that we can give everyone in the city as to how to respond to the public and give information that is absolutely clear. And that is my advocacy with regard to these bills. It is my conception that if we know at least one basic number that we can teach anyone, irrespective of language, that they can incorporate into their daily living, is the daily usage for their water. By the way, it was 86 gallons a day as opposed to 77. That was my previous bill. And the amount of kilowatt hours per day. It's just two very simple things that in the long run becomes incorporated into their families, into their kids, and you can promote it through the schools and so forth. And also eventually the cost, you know, the daily cost for that service. Those kinds of messages as to what kind of, you know, where are our bills headed with regard to cost? How am I participating in energy conservation? You know, how is the city, you know, what are the city's objectives to achieve, you know, improve results for us? And that's really as simple as it gets. But I find that we get sometimes way too much information for the type of basic things that we need to assess how we're doing. And I think that's what I'm trying to promote. You know, the kind of participation and simplicity that will allow us to really gauge how we're doing and how we can participate in improving the quality of life here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milano.
Next item, oral communications for this meeting.
Mr. Milano, did you want to speak again? I have only one comment from you, but I thought they were combined, so thank you. Yeah.
Next item, old business.
Do we have any old business? It's over.
New business.
An issue has been brought up regarding training of commissioners. So a lot of us are fairly new to this, and we were interested in getting some instruction regarding not only protocol, but the kinds of things that we should be hearing. And in fact, it might be useful, I think, to solicit the commissioners for issues they're interested in. I'm not certain what would be the appropriate venue. And I turn to look at the city attorney as the person who might be able to comment on this.
Mr. President, members of the commission, we can accommodate whatever your desire is. If you need some Brown Act training or you would like some direction on the scope of your advisory authority, we can help with that as well. Robert's Rules of Orders, et cetera. We can have some training here. I guess if the commissioners can give me whatever input they want to give me here, or even email me things they're interested in learning about, I can work with staff in my office to put something together for you.
Well, I would suggest we do that then, that we email to you the topics we're interested in, and possibly at the end of the next meeting, if that's satisfactory, we could receive a instruction from you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up, and that was this idea of a report in which we look at the long-term balance of supply and demand, and I just wanted to, and the water side, and I just wanted to commend Peter for the presentation that was given by Dr. Williams earlier this evening regarding the local water resources and what can be done there. I think that would fit in very neatly with a planning effort to see what could be done to make sure that our supplies are adequate to meet future demands. And this is brought up partly because of the concern we also had with the meeting last time with it. This is a regional problem, as Commissioner Ibrahimian has pointed out to us. I think it would be useful to look at that. Traditionally, I think the issue of urban growth and water supply has usually been disjoined. We just provide the water and the growth occurs. But we're in a situation now where water supplies are getting very difficult to obtain, and it might be useful to look at what we can do on the growth side possibly to manage demand. We've talked about that in previous meetings with the green building approach, and I think something like that would be worth looking at in terms of a long-term vision of how we're going to balance supply and demand. So I just want to mention those points. Thank you. Were there any other new business items? Thank you.
Agenda item number 7, agenda forecast. Any other things you'd like to add to the agenda forecast other than what were mentioned here today?
I have nothing myself.
With the AMI overview, I understand we just did the first initial study, and I understand a report will be coming up, or a more detailed study when that comes. Okay, we don't have really a time frame yet, right? Okay.
Before we abandon this issue, I did want to ask, where are we in terms of planning the budget for next fiscal year?
The budget process starts in October.
Okay.
For the next fiscal year.
Okay. Well, we should probably look at something about that when that comes up. Thank you.
And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's typically what we do. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Is seconded?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Okay. Any opposed? This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much. The next time we're going to meet is, without my glasses, a little bit difficult. September 8th, 2008 at 4 o'clock in this room. Thank you very much.